Hello, I'm going to give you a small, short presentation about the few ideas that I had regarding the Vizcom product on how to make it more user-friendly, easier to use, and make it more art-directable for 2D concept designers. So first off, I'm going to spend a few minutes talking about the problem space. Then I'll dive into the 4 or 5 ideas that I have. And finally, at the end, a few slides about what I would have done if I had more time. So let's go ahead and get started. The first thing about 3D modeling is that it's something that I love personally, but I also recognize that it's something that is extremely expensive in terms of human resources. It's time consuming, it has a high barrier of entry, and it's not kind of something that is accessible to everybody, because it's not just about having the technical ability, it's about having the time and the mind space to dedicate years of your life learning how to 3D model. And the problem on top of that is that there's various ways to model the same thing. You've got CAD, you've got CAD with NURBS, or like solid modeling, sub-Ds, just polygon modeling, sculpting, a whole bunch of other things, right? So it's not the easiest craft to get into. And by comparison, you got things like sketching, which is by comparison much easier in terms of it has a lower barrier of entry. It's much cheaper to start with and iterate with. Communicating ideas through sketches is just 1,000 times more efficient and faster than with 3D modeling. And that's the problem. Like, what if 3D modeling was as easy, as fast, and as accessible as sketching is currently? So, for example, well, one of the things I know from personal experience visiting Volvo a few years ago is that one day the head of design came in and said, "Oh, guess what, guys? This 3D grill that we've all been working on for the past, let's say, 6 months, it's all going down the drain. It's all like we've got to restart from scratch." And that's obviously very costly for the business, but also like personally as an individual contributor, it's a very much of a high factor on morale in terms of as it's a powerful demotivator. So what if 3D modeling was as convenient to edit than 2D sketches? And that's the basis of my presentation here. Um, what if high quality 3D modeling was as easy to access, to do, and to edit as 2D sketching? At the moment, it's just so much work and so much time being spent on perfecting 3D models. Whereas, in my opinion, a lot more of that effort could be better spent making sure the right thing is built earlier on, and then spending the time in, let's say, Alias or ISIMSurf, refining those kind of locked down creative ideas into final form. And one of the things is that we're like people, the tech industry is currently exploring is the idea of letting artificial intelligence guide 3D modeling a lot more. So at the moment, you've got these like things like Point E and a couple of models by Google and NVIDIA that are able to produce, pretty low quality 3D models at the moment based on a single 2D images or a text prompt, for example. The problem is that those things actually have two major flaws, in my opinion. One is that they're only able to produce either things that already exist really well, like monkeys or bread, or combination of other things, like the tiger with a doctor suit and things like this, right? And the second major flaw, in my opinion, is that they're really hard to art direct. For instance, I used Point E to generate this red motorcycle that you see in the background. And first of all, it's like based on point clouds. So it's really hard topology to edit afterwards and reuse. I'd have to remodel that from scratch. And let's say I'm not happy with the shape of a motorcycle. I was looking for something like more like a Harley Davidson with like large handlebars. And it's really hard to be able to describe and like I said, art direct the outcome of these AI models at this place in time. And one of the problems that I've encountered while working on this project is like I saw this image of a car, and how would you describe in words to an AI what this car looks like? And here you have the luxury of having a perfectly well rendered photograph of this uh, open cockpit racer with three wheels or whatever it is. It's really hard to describe in words. So and that is the strength of 3D modeling for all of its flaws, is that it's slow, but at least it allows you to iterate and figure out the form as you're making it. So, like in this instance, you've got a screenshot of a bust of a head of a kind of monster character. The artist at this point in time doesn't have a clear idea of every detail of that head, but as he's working on it, he's slowly figuring out how to mesh the nose, the mouth, the chin, and the ears, right? And that's the thing. Art directing something is not like, oh, I have a clear idea of exactly what I want right from the start. You figure that thing out as you go along. And my ideas that I'll present in a minute are actually about kind of holding the hand of the AI, so to speak, as you figure out how to model exactly what you want. So, like I said, the following ideas are basically suggestions and concepts around making or improving 2D/3D AI models to become more iterative tools at the hands of the user. So first up, we've got 3D models inferred from rich 2D sketches. One of the links you've sent over is actually this research paper that exposes this concept tool that allows the user to draw outlines of a shape of a camera, for example, and based on the various angles that the user draws these outlines, the kind of machine learning AI software is able to kind of deduce a ideal solution of what the user wants the final shape to look like. And the thing is, currently in Vizcom, you have the possibility of adding many sketches in one space. So let's say at the moment I'm drawing a few cars in 2D, and I've got a side view, a 3/4 rear with like a bird's eye perspective, and a 3/4 front of my kind of SUV design. And at the moment, you're not able to have multiple files in the same space, and it's a shame because actually it would help users, artists, see the different sides of their design in the same space, and also have the ability to kind of see all of their work as they're doing it, influenced by the AI. So, for instance, if we focus on that 3/4 front sketch, the user can double tap on the canvas with their mouse or their styluses, and it would open a sidebar that's heavily inspired by the last newsletter that you guys sent out, where you have a layers panel, a prompt entering window, and a few other sliders. And in here, you'll be able to enter a prompt and click on generate, and the software would automatically generate in this case, high quality photoreal render of a car based on the previous design. One of the things I also notice in 2D concept art, especially for automotive, is that the perspective is often very much exaggerated for kind of like stylistic purposes and creative direction. Unfortunately, for inferring the ideal perspective of a 3D model and its look and feel, that's not ideal. So what if there was a tool that I took inspiration from Blender, where it's a plugin called perspective plotter, which allows you to lay down guidelines, so to speak, so that the camera from a certain position is set to look as much as the 2D sketch as possible. So let's say you're able to say, okay, I've got my kind of longitudinal lines going this way and my lateral lines going that way, and they're supposed to be orthogonal in quote unquote the real world. So you'd place these like guidelines that you can then use inside of your 3D space, the clicking press in place in 3D, or clicking that kind of isometric cube icon, and you'll be able to use your previous sketches, place them into a 3D space like this, and based on the various angles, the various kind of like specular reflections, and the inference of depth from the various perspective, the AI would be able to produce a fairly authentic, realistic 3D model of that shape like this. Obviously, this is very much idealized in terms of workflow, but ideally, this is what it would look like. And, using AI to produce a 3D model is not just the end of it. You need to kind of put it in situ, generate an environment or an HDRI. And so in this case, you'll be able to like double tap on the background on an empty space, and a prompt window will come up, and you'll be able to either type or even handwrite a description of what you want your environment to look like, in this case, a studio environment. And just immediately, just like that, you'd get a realistic looking model in a realistic looking environment. So yeah, that's the first idea. The second idea is about using kind of the concept of 2D diffusion, but of in-painting, I mean, inside of 3D. So let's say you've got an already well-made, high-quality 3D model, either that's already generated inside of Vizcom or imported from outside, let's say. You'd like to add some more details in that empty-looking area on the side of its head. So you'd grab your diffusion in-painting tool and then draw an area onto the model, which you would then be prompted to enter a description of what you want that area to look like. In this case, I put this embedded detail pipes prompt in it. And within a few seconds, the diffusion model would start working and then embedding the suggested details onto the existing mesh seamlessly. So the idea is that you would get these like amazing looking detailed pipes that match the style, the environment, and the lighting, and the kind of like embedding of details inside of the existing model without, manually modeling them. And obviously this is a kind of very idealized, again, workflow, but let's say we take a side mirror of this 720S, for example. I put the original image into DALL-E 2 and then kind of reformed a different looking side mirror. And let's say, oh, you'd like to explore a different design, for example. So again, you grab your tool and then you draw, you outline the region of the design of the 3D model that you want to edit, make a suggestion, and then it would automatically reshape that area, not only from your perspective, but the kind of various other consequences, like the backside of the side mirror seen from the other angle. So it would do this very much still art directed by you, the user, but the AI/3D system would do the heavy lifting of dealing the consequences of artistically changing that shape in that side. So yeah, I made a crude looking mock-up in Blender of like what would drawing these zones onto a curved model would look like. It wouldn't just use the 2D screen space and just project it. It would just like wrap around the various surfaces of your existing model to then edit. And what are practical applications of that? For example, you'd be able to quickly add louvers onto a side body or aqueducts or another like kind of like very difficult and time consuming details to make. And for interiors, you'd be able to add like air vents or center console panels and infotainment systems very quickly and very easily. And if you're not happy with the current result, you just tell the AI to generate another iteration. And as soon as you're happy, you can say, okay, lock it in, guys, I'm good. Another problem that I encountered during my time at Autodesk is also multi-surface patterning. Right now, in kind of games and concept design, people cheat by using textures and mapping them around the various surfaces. But what if there was a way to let the AI kind of apply 3D patterns around complex, like many sets of complex surfaces, and do these things like intricate bumps, intricate patterns, or stamping logos, for example. I think it would be like a huge time saver for designers to iterate with various themes in their design extremely quickly, because this is one of the things that doing at a high quality level inside of Alias, for example, is extremely time consuming. So if there was ways to for art directors, creative directors, heads of design, or even concept designers to quickly experiment with various patterns, it would be amazing. And last but not least, it's visual programming. What if there was an AI node visual programming system inside of Vizcom? So, for instance, you'll be able to mouse over the left sidebar, and on these kind of like different categories of nodes, you'd be able to see the various nodes available to you inside of Vizcom, and these are all kind of prompts, outputs of prompts from ChatGPT. So these are like not realistic at all. They're just like filler text basically. But you'll be able to drag and drop them into your canvas, but also just import images with like a paste or a drag and drop. And so we have this image that you import into your canvas, and use the kind of search palette or command bar just to input more nodes. So let's say I type in the word image, and it would automatically suggest the various image related nodes available in this system. And I'm going to go for image for prompt. It'll put it directly into the canvas. And then I want to connect, but obviously connecting can be somewhat of a tedious task. You've got to mouse over exactly on this region and then mouse over exactly on that region. And that's a lot of like time wasted in my opinion. So I took inspiration from a plugin called Node Wrangler inside of Blender, which does what it says. It does like a lazy connect by holding a modifier key, in this case, like the Alt button, and just about mousing over the two nodes that you want to connect, it'll say, okay, well, I know you're trying to connect this into this, and I've got like an image output connector here, and you're probably going to connect it to this image input of the image to prompt node. And based on these like quote unquote safe assumptions, you'll be able to do quick connections very quickly, very visually. And so in this case, you'll have an image to prompt node that it is instructed to find a description of this image in 3 words. In this case, bird, hat, Oppenheimer, right? Anyway, and also you'll be able to just drag away from the connector and release your mouse just like in Blender, and then be prompted to enter what you want the noodle to connect to. I made a few examples of that, like imagined a few use cases of what this AI node system could look like. So you'd be able to create images based on prompt that you're able to like concatenate in them. And I experimented with Midjourney in the past few days, thanks to this kind of home assignment. And one of the things I find really time consuming and annoying is to kind of edit the prompt as I was iterating on them. So let's say, oh, does that word work? What about that other word? And copying, pasting, and then like re-entering, and then like it's just a waste of time in my opinion. So what if there was like just a way to quickly be able to experiment with prompts in the canvas or other stuff that are written very quickly, and just say, oh, you know what, and walks the talk, I don't like it. I'd quickly disconnect it, and I'll be able to see in real time, or at least very quickly, the influence of its absence. So yeah, I'll put various other things like a palette extractor based on the number of colors. You just say, hey, I want this image, I want to extract the 3 colors based on it, and I want those 3 colors to influence the output of the image generator based on these prompts and these various other parameters, right? And if you're not happy with those 12 images that you've generated, you can quickly click on this run again button, and it would regenerate 12 images that you were able to peruse it at your own leisure. And there's like this little button which kind of like makes that whole area bigger to see the area, to see these images quicker, but you could also be able to zoom in into that specific area. Next up is a kind of AI material generator. And again, I imagine a system where you'd have 3 input images that you've pulled off the internet, and a prompt that generates an image that looks like a material. But again, this is inspired by Midjourney, where you're able to blend, I believe, up to 5 images at the same time. But again, it doesn't allow you to decide and kind of modulate the weight of each image's blends. So what if you were able to do that visually and iteratively inside of a graph system, where you'd have little previews of each corner representing an image, and you could move that gizmo around the kind of like XY square area to decide which image you want to have more of an influence into the final outcome. So I used Midjourney to blend these 4 images into this one, and it says the output can then be used to create a material that can then be used in your 3D scene. So, and because maybe the user is lazy and just wants a unique name for the material, you can just use the image to prompt node to just come up with a quick name for that node, for that material, for just organizational purposes, right? Last but not least, next up is actually a system where previously we used the search bar to search for nodes and place them into the canvas. But what if you could use it to say, to instruct the software, or the artificial intelligence in that case, to do something for you? So let's say, hey, I want to create a material that looks like Greco Scrito marble. You just type that in, hit enter, and within a few seconds, or even instantly, it would lay out the nodes and connect them in the right way in a canvas for you. So like, again, this is like, I think for me, this is a very simple example, but in the future, I think this is a way for non-experts to quickly create really good results very quickly. Because the thing about visual programming systems, even though I love them, there can be quite a high barrier of entry. Some people might just be completely allergic at the idea of coding, even visually. So having a system like this, that you just instruct the system with like a simple sentence to say, hey, do this for me. Put a if statement, put a for loop. I don't know, like just do it like this with words, and then instantly get the result. It might not be exactly what you want. It might not be perfect, but it works, and it allows you to iterate on it very quickly. And a couple of other things I want to mention really quick. What if there was a kind of gestural system in this, inspired by Opera, the old web browser that's now close to dead. But anyway, it's like it had this really cool, it was the first browser to come up with like a gesture system where you would use the right mouse button and then drag it onto the left to go to the previous page, drag it onto the right to go to the next page. You'll be able to reload a tab, close a tab, just using like these quick gestures. And there was this old game back in 2001 where you could cast spells based on mouse gestures. And my idea is, what if there was a way to kind of add nodes or group of nodes or invoke commands based on certain gestures? Like a capital M would just say, okay, I want a material, so implement a complex material setup. for me to start using. Anyway, it's just ideas that I had. And if I had more time, what would I do? A couple of things is an always on ray trace viewport and a real-time AI compositor. So the first up is like there's this pretty cool product called WOMP. Maybe you've heard about it. It's a product in alpha which does whose goal is to make 3D modeling accessible to everyone. And it uses metables and Boolean operations to kind of blend meshes, blend materials all together, and it's really easy to use. But like for me, the coolest thing is that it's got this always-on ray traced viewport. And as you move around, like things are quite noisy at the moment, which is okay, but it's cloud-based, so it doesn't use any of your local resources, and you get like a pretty high quality like reflections, and you get self reflections. You don't get a bunch of like really cool things. And I was wondering, like, hey, there's a lot of AI trickery going on at the moment with video games, with with ray tracing and upscaling. Things like DLSS and stuff like that, right? So what if you had a 3D editing experience where you wouldn't rely on a kind of quote unquote crappy looking result? You would always see a high quality, high fidelity material, correct lighting, correct self-reflection, correct depth of field, all in real time, accelerated by artificial intelligence, right? So I thought it would be like a pretty cool thing to explore. And also is style transfer, because I'm sure you know EbSynth, where you can like basically take a source image that you've drawn in and then transfer that style into a target image, in this case like this frame from Stranger Things. And the reason I mention it is that because I've seen kind of like comments on LinkedIn where people were saying how too good looking some of the professional looking automotive sketches look. For instance, the new Ferrari SUV, they released the official sketches and they look absolutely amazing. And some people say they just use the CAD underlays to trace a new sketch and make it look super sexy. And I was like, hey, what if there was a way to make that into a useful product? So let's say you had like a rough looking 3D mesh of this kind of like concept interior inside of Vizcom, and you'll be able to tell the AI, take the information that you see on screen, like depth pass and the topology that's available there, and then apply style transfer based on a prompt or based on an input image to render that frame in a certain style. And I think it'd be useful just for kind of presentation purposes for concept designers, but also marketing and communication or advertising and stuff like that, right? So just be able to quickly get a really good looking result based on even rough concept models. And another cool examples I see of that, and this is how I know it's perfectly possible, is like there's this like artist on Twitter called Ian Wyatt who did a geometry node setup to take any kind of arbitrary mesh inside of a viewport, in this case like this bust of like, I don't know, some Greek figure or something, statue, and just turn it into a painting. So like what if AI was able to do that in real time for you as you're changing the material, changing the model, changing the proportions and all that good stuff, right? So again, just food for thought. Anyway, that was me. Thank you very much for your attention and your time. If you have any questions, just please feel free to email me at hello@shinjipons.com. And yeah, thank you.